No one can live as long as I have, more especially if he practices law for a number of years, without occasionally coming in contact with the ugly and sordid things of life. But when you do, I recommend you forget them as quickly as possible. They are poison, and if harbored, they grow until, without your being conscious of it, they vitiate your whole life, and their repetition hurts you, not the guilty, and all those with whom you come in contact. Believing that to be true, I have intentionally avoided relating any incident in this story that I thought could possibly reflect unfavorably on anyone, living or dead, or their relatives or friends. In this story, I have depended solely upon memory and hearsay, and understanding the fallibility of both, you will make proper allowance. However, I have endeavored to stick strictly to the facts, avoiding all use of fiction, even when it was obvious it would improve the telling. In defense of my faulty memory, I should offer these extenuating circumstances which, no doubt, affected my memory one way or another. First, I lack only 5 years of being half as old as the United States government, have lived through the administrations of 15 of the 32 presidents of the United States, through the longest period of peace this country has enjoyed up to the present, through a number of recessions, depressions, and panics, various periods of epidemics when Cal science was not able to cope with them, through the time when labor troubles went unnoticed until the day when they became a definite threat to permanent stability. I have seen the oceans rolled up until they no longer offered our shores a defense, and space and distance was all but eliminated. I have lived through a period of seeming security to one of threatened mass destruction of life and property with no adequate means of protection or defense. Yes, I have lived during the most dynamic period of American history so far, and when I review the panorama of the past, I do so with pride and awe, yet shudder at the ominous clouds hanging over us. Still, come what may, I have full confidence that our great nation will ultimately fulfill its destiny in leading the world to a lasting peace. And now I take this opportunity to thank Miss Lucy Messimer, our office stenographer, who typed this story from a pencil original during spare time. How she managed to read my writing is more than I can tell, and I am sure no one else could have done so. So if there are any mistakes, don't blame her. If it is halfway correct, she did well, and for her work and patience I am indeed greatly indebted. Because I have nothing better to employ my time during the long winter days when I cannot get out, I will try to write you a short letter concerning a long life. As nearly as possible, I will confine my story to exact facts, as I remember them, but necessarily supplemented here and there by related incidents that are beyond my memory, but inseparable from what I personally know. As far as possible, I have verified the parts related to me and believe them to be correct for the particular reason they come to me through those who knew the facts and were personally involved in them, such as those coming from my grandfathers who served in the Civil War and their families who were directly affected by its results. I do not intend to resurrect the war and its aftermath beyond the bare necessity, as it is better forgotten good and bad. It has served its purpose, let it sleep. Now back to my story. As to my memories, all have been buried during the passage of many years, and some entirely forgotten, no doubt, but my first task is to dig them up if possible. I know where they are buried all right, in the cluttered-up, dust-covered attic of the mind. Some are photographs and others are records of long-past incidents. Get all of them, sort them out and piece them together as you would a cut-out puzzle. The big difference is that no one can help you. It is something like a dog burying a bone. He can always find it, but no other dog can. Well, I am now in the attic, and what a mess. For 75 years I have been storing these records and photographs, and when I unearth one I have to dust it off, study its faded picture a long time to recognize it at all, but by placing it beside another, it falls in place, giving you not only the completed scene, but the date also. It's fascinating. Try it yourself. You would think in different time would absolutely efface it, or the millions of suck. Seeding thoughts would crowd it out, but it does not. A brain is the crown of God's creation, and beyond understanding, even by our best specialists in that particular field. They claim to know how it works, but why is something else. Anyway, I am trying to faithfully reenact the scenes disclosed in the records stored in my attic, giving you actual names of persons and places. Nothing will be fictitious intentionally. In considering what I write you, take into giving you actual names of persons and places. You know the high points of the first part from history, and the balance, both low and high, from having lived it. You will discover many of my ideas are moss-covered and quite out of date in 1953. Don't let that worry you, since they don't cut much ice anyway, and will eventually entirely melt into limbo. What I now write is a prelude to the story I hope to tell later, but some things I wish to record first, for my own satisfaction. And don't get yourself lost if I wander now and then. Keep in mind that both my qualification and experience in writing is limited to the vanishing point, and all I really have is hope and willingness to try. Anyway, it's just between us girls. You personally know I have been living a long time and had to learn some things, mostly the hard way. Things I did learn might not be of any value to you, but they were to me, especially the influence they had on my thinking and in other ways made my life what it has been and is. Don't get the idea I discount book education. Far from it, and the more you get the better you're equipped for living, but you have to have something else to go with it. My thoughts are that when you leave the schoolroom, you just begin your education. This school is compulsory. The end of its term is at the end of one's life. There's no limit to its subjects, no textbooks that cover your case, and the subjects are those prescribed by the laws of necessity, and the rules are not universal. It may be that I am a little partial to the things I learned outside of books, because I know more of this kind, and especially because the books don't know things purely personal to each of us, and most vital. What I mean is that books are so indifferent, have no feeling, can't even express the simple nature of reactions such as love, hate, etc. They give you a definition, all right, but can't express a single natural human emotion. And ordinary living is 100% emotion, one way or another. Perhaps it would help if I gave you an illustration. Only out of a living experience I learned to feel and appreciate the love my parents had for me, the sacrifices, labor, and care bestowed upon me, and I'm sorry to say I didn't remotely understand its real meaning until I had lived long enough to rear a family of my own, by which time both mother and father had passed on. You might learn this from books, but I didn't, because the books didn't know about it and couldn't have expressed it if they had. What I want to say is, don't depend wholly on what you read in the paper. Here's another simple example. When Mama and I were married, we thought we loved each other. That is what we really thought then. But since that time, we have lived together for 50 years and reared 4 daughters, with all the incidents that go with it. And we now know, not merely think, we really love each other. And the best part of it is we know why. In my practice of law, I found divorces generally happen before the parties have lived together long enough to find out whether they really loved each other or not. Edgar Guest said, "It takes a lot of living in a house to make it home. It takes very little time to turn fancy into hate, but love is a house plant and has to be cultivated for a long time to make it blossom into the kind of love born in heaven. Hate is an instinct of animals, but love an attribute of humans only. Take the time necessary to know, not merely think. I believe the best way to get somewhere in life is to learn all you can from books and all you can from experience. Put them together and use the combined equipment to the fullest extent. Wear them out, don't let them rust out. I haven't always done this, B, because it took me too long to learn it. I hope you do better than I did. The real purpose of this introduction, or whatever you wish to call it, is to give credit where credit belongs for what success I have had, though it is far from what it should have been, considering the advantages I had. My failures are mine alone. First and foremost, I give thanks to Him who made me the necessary faith and courage to keep fighting when things were difficult, for pointing out the way, though I didn't always follow it, for helping me up when I was down. For some reason, known only to Him, He has seemed to take a special interest in my welfare. I'm sure of that, though it couldn't have been because of merit. I could name instance after instance where fellows my age with education, ambition, and fine natural ability and opportunities, equal or better than mine, failed to make the grade. The only reason I can assign is they didn't have the help I had. Why, I do not know, but am sure they could have had it if they had been willing to accept it. That is my conclusion. I didn't get just what I earned, but much more than my conduct merited. Now you answer it as you see it. But I had even more than that. No one ever had better parents than I had. My father gave up everything and suffered everything to carry the gospel to the world. He believed and practiced the idea that his soul and body belonged to God, and he literally gave it to Him. Nothing came between him and his work. Sick or well, paid or not paid, he kept his appointments. Many times I have seen him get on his horse and start off in the coldest weather without clothing enough to keep him warm, to his church 8 or 10 miles away. Because of these exposures and utter disregard for his own welfare, he contracted TB and died at the age of 59. Can such sacrifice be made without leaving its influence on others? I say no. However, for really pulling the load, the credit goes to Mother. Without the actual necessities of life, she fought a terrific battle. Later on, I will tell you why I say without the necessities of life. When I say she raised 6 children to manhood and womanhood, I mean Mother. Consider this. She had 3 boys and 3 girls, and to this day, not one of them brought reproach on the family. Not a single one ever cursed, kept lewd company, or drank liquor. I was the blackest of the sheep, and I didn't. To this day, I have never taken a drink of liquor except when it was prescribed by a physician. If I am not stating the truth, you girls will know. We didn't abstain from such things because of a lack of temptation or opportunity, and it wasn't accidental, but because of Father's example and Mother's eternal vigilance. Mother and Father were the best team I ever saw. He was the example, but she was the power behind the throne. Father was of English descent, but Mother was Scotch, and she maintained the tradition for thrift and frugality, which is why we ever got by at all. She was of the opinion that one must head for heaven, but not forget there were chores to be done along the way. She believed the Lord would provide by putting things in our reach, but it was our place to go after them. I never heard that the Scotch were noted scrappers, but she was one. All the way I can account for that is that a strong east wind blew from Ireland over Scotland, and she contracted something peppery from it. You might get her goat once in a while, but you couldn't keep it long, and it was about as dangerous to turn it loose as to keep it. One of her strong points was sureness. When she said a thing was black, it had better be black, whether it wanted to or not. How she fed and clothed us children remains a miracle. She didn't have as much for her whole family for a year as it cost me and my wife to live 1 month, and I'm pretty tight myself. I will say, to the best of my recollection, she didn't have as much as $5 per month in money. I may go into the details further later. All I have said here is to show you what I got from good parents and to what extent I am eternally indebted to them. I claim no credit for myself beyond trying to follow their admonition and example. You children already know many things I refer to, but most of it happened before the beginning of the 19th century, and it will not do you or yours any harm to know how some of your own people had to live back in the dim past. If I repeat things occasionally, charge it to senility, or whatever you wish. The persons already referred to are not all the ones to whom I am greatly indebted, not by a long shot. However, realizing I am making a case against myself for not being more than I am, I wish to acknowledge my debts and give each their just credit. In 1903, I married a beautiful girl with a beautiful character. I thought then our meeting was accidental, but I now believe Providence planned it. I thought then I loved her, but after living with her 50 years, I know I still do, and as I said before, I now know why. To me, she is as beautiful today as the day I first met her, and stronger in character than ever before. I am now sure real happy marriages are made in heaven. Her name was then Molly Milligan, and Irish from crown to toenails. You see why I say our marriage was not an accident. My father was English, mother Scotch, and now I had an Irish wife. Can you beat that? I held all the cards in the deck. If I had played them right, nothing could have beaten me, but I didn't, and on that hangs a tail, and the hide goes with it. Anyway, the woman God gave me was all any girl could possibly be. She not only stood by me, but did her part of the fighting as well. I sometimes got in the dumps, but she managed to pull me out. When I couldn't see through the dark clouds, she could. When I said I couldn't do a difficult task, she insisted I could. A wife's encouragement is equal to any dozen other people. All the more as we have 4 girls, and all the burden of children always falls on mother. That in itself is 2/3 of the work and worry of any family. In addition to caring for the children, she has to have the husband and his problems to worry about. A good mother makes the home, present and future, and her influence lives as long as her children live. Any success I have had is due more to the help of my good wife than any one other thing. Gladly I give her full credit for our happiness and what's more, the happiness of our children. What it took to make you children what you are, she. When the time comes for us to leave this world, I hope we can make the journey together. But if we can't, I prefer to go first because she is much more able to take care of herself without me than I would be without her. There is still another contribution to my life for which I am greatly indebted and wish to acknowledge, and that is the coming of 4 beautiful daughters who grew into beautiful and accomplished women. They were born without blemish or handicap, and they are still without either. Nature gave them splendid minds and lofty ambitions which they have cultivated. None have ever brought reproach upon us or themselves. To me, that is something to be very proud of. Such things don't just happen. It is not only a joy to parents, but also an inspiration. They have naturally followed in the footsteps of their mother. Today, each has a family of her own, and like all women before them, they carry the load. What I now set out, you children already know, but for my own satisfaction and for the information it will provide to the future generation, I make it a part of this record. This is March 1953, but soon that will be history, buried in the attic of memory or entirely forgotten. Ruth, our firstborn, is now Mrs. Harry Hudson. He is with the U.S. State Department, now stationed at Manila, Philippine Islands, where he has been for the last 4 years. Before that, he was stationed at Tientsin, China. Then they were moved to Hong Kong. They are coming to the States this fall on furlough. They have crossed the Pacific 6 or 8 times and have seen and visited more of our world than I ever dreamed of. Harry was the son of an English missionary and was born in China, all of which has helped him in his work among Asian people. Before going with the State Department, he practiced law in this country. Ruth, before her marriage, was a teacher in the public schools of Bristol, and there was none better. She was an accomplished musician, which was a great help in her work. They have 2 children. Martha, we call her Marty, is now married to a Robert Van Devore and lives in the state of Washington. She was the oldest, and then Stuart, who is still in grade school, is in Manila with his parents. Our second daughter is Dorothy, everybody calls her Dot, the wife of Ernest King, a practicing attorney in Bristol where they live. She, like Ruth, was a teacher before her marriage, but was retired during the time the children were small. However, she is now teaching. If there ever was a natural, she is one when it comes to teaching and handling children, and everybody will vouch for this statement. The Kings have 2 boys, Robert, called Bobby, and Lawrence, called Larry. Bobby is in high school and Larry in grammar school. It is useless to say Mama and I love all our children and grandchildren and are justly proud of them. Catherine, we call her Cat, is our third daughter and married to Chalmers King, a lawyer, and now chief counsel for the U.S. government project in the atomic city of Los Alamos, New Mexico, where they have lived for the last 6 years or more. Before marriage, Kat was a secretary in different law offices, beginning with me while I practiced. She was efficient in every respect, giving her work the careful attention necessary in handling legal papers, a difficult thing for most girls. They have only one child, a daughter named Catherine, but called Sandy by us, and a precious child in every respect, as was Marty, the only other granddaughter we have. Having at one time been a boy, I can't call the boys precious in the same sense I do the girls. You have to be careful in using superlatives in reference to boys, but we love them nonetheless. Kat and her family drive the long distance between Los Alamos and Bristol at least once a year to see us, which we enjoy more than words can express. Our fourth and youngest child is Elizabeth Carroll, always called Carol, now Mrs. Wilson Scoggins. Her husband is a chemist with a large oil refining company at Bartlesville, Oklahoma. Previous to that, he was a chemistry teacher at Lincoln Memorial University, located at Harriman, Tennessee. Carol, like Kat, was a secretary in law offices, and she too began in my office, always strictly business and careful with her work. She didn't let anything get by. I regret to state that she suffered a great tragedy in the loss of her first husband, Kenneth Weaver, while he was gyroscope operator on a ship during the Second World War and in the battle with the Japanese Navy off Leyte, Philippine Islands on November 19, 1944. She has 2 boys by her second marriage. The oldest, Wilson, has always been called Billy, and this name fits him exactly. The second boy, still a baby, is Robert, but as usual called Bobby. We have not seen him since he was big enough to crawl, and you can imagine how we look forward to their visit sometime this year. This is a small part of what I would like to say, but I am trying mainly to state my reasons for both Mama and me being so proud of our children and grandchildren, all of which has contributed so much to our happiness and to whom we are greatly indebted.